parsing we'll discuss. So basically this is what the XML file we created. This is what the XML file we created. Employees is a root tag. Next it contains a tag called employee is a tag. It contains one more tag called ID. Close the ID tag. This is what the data we created in the XML, right? This is the data we created in the last class in the XML format. Close the employee. Like this, if you are having one more employee record, again open the employee by employee tag. Okay. So again open employee by employee tag. 1 to 4. What is the name? Designation, department, and finally we had to close which tag? Finally we had to close employees tag. We had to close. Okay. So basically this is the XML file we created in the last class. Now we'll see how to represent this same XML file in a JSON format. We'll see how to represent this XML file in a JSON format. So JSON is most widely accepted format now than the XML file. Of course, XML is having its own specialties and JSON is having its own specialties. Okay, but now in the market, present market, so in maximum places, JSON is used more than the XML file. I'll tell you the reasons. I'll tell you why the people are prefer to use this JSON than the XML. Okay, give me a minute. So this is what the XML file we created in the last class. Okay, so now we'll see how to represent this XML file in a JSON format. How we'll represent this XML file in a JSON format. Okay, so basically JSON is termed as JavaScript object notation. JSON is termed as what? JSON is termed as JavaScript object notation. JSON is termed as JavaScript object notation. See, in the entire JSON file, you can find only two things you can find in the entire JSON file. In the entire JSON file, you can find what? Only two things you can find in the entire JSON file. One is JSON object, second thing is JSON array. Apart from these two things, you cannot find any new thing in the JSON format. One is what? JSON object, second thing is what? JSON array. Object will be represented by using a flower bracket. One is JSON object. The entire JSON file contains what? Only two things the entire JSON file contains. One is JSON object, second thing is what? JSON array. One is JSON object, second thing is what? JSON array. So this object will be represented by using this flower bracket. JSON object will be represented by using what? By using flower bracket, JSON object will be represented. Okay, and JSON array will be represented by using the square bracket. JSON array will be represented by using what? By using the square bracket will represent this. JSON array will represent. Okay. So apart from these two things, you cannot find any new thing in the entire JSON file. Now let's see how to represent this XML file. How we'll represent this XML file in a JSON file. Okay. So first thing is the employees tag. Meaning this is a main JSON object. We had to represent with what? Object we had to represent. We had to represent with a object. This is a main JSON object. Okay. Next, this employees tag contains what? lot of employee tags, right? This is one employee tag, this is another employee tag. This is a main JSON object. It contains lot of employee records. So we had to create one array we had to create. But before going to create that array, we had to give a name we had to give for that one. So we are having a multiple employee records. Multiple means will represent with what? With array will represent, right? Multiple means will represent with what? With an array will represent. So array, I'm creating an array, I'm creating. The main JSON object contains the multiple records. So I'm giving a name I'm giving for this array. Okay. So here array will be represented by using what? By using square bracket, array will be represent. By using square bracket, array will be what? Represent. Next, this array contains multiple JSON objects. Okay. So individual object will be represent. Again, individual object will be represented by using what? By using a flower bracket. Sorry. So individual object will be represented by using this flower bracket will represent individual object. So it contains values like, for example, id is 123 comma. This is one record. Okay. Like this, if you want to can create one more record, you can create. This is another record. So that's why we create one more JSON object we created. Okay. And finally we had to close what? The JSON array we had to close finally, and finally we had to close the main JSON object we had to close. So close the array, then after that close the main JSON object. Close the array and close what? The main JSON object. So in this way we'll represent the we'll represent the same XML file. Same XML file will represent in this format in a JSON. Okay. So id is equals to 1 to 3 name. This is one individual employee record. So that's why we create one individual object. We create separate object inside the array. This one separate object. Yes, but employee separately we have to specify. Just if you had to create an array, we had to create. For that array, we had to specify the name. Name of the array is employees is the array name. Meaning in this, everything is same, but you cannot find this employee tag. You cannot find. That's it. This employee is going to be removed. This tag is going to be removed. You cannot find this tag. You cannot find. Okay. So now in place of the tag, you'll get the individual object. You will get. This is an individual object. This object contains these details. Okay. So now see here why the people are preferred to use this JSON than the XML format, because first advantage is nothing but both are used to transfer the data. XML and JSON both are what? Data transfer purpose we use. For transferring the data from one technology to another technology, we use either XML or JSON. But if we compare these two things, XML and JSON, which will occupy the less amount of space? Which will occupy the less space, XML or JSON? By seeing this, we can understand, right? Which one is occupying, which one is having the less characters? JSON, right? So JSON is having less characters compared to the XML file. Mainly, these two are used to transfer the data in the network. Okay, So compared to XML file, JSON occupies less amount of space. For example, here it is XML is occupying a 10 KB of space. JSON will occupy hardly a 5 to 6 KB of space it will occupy. So which one will load faster, a 10 KB or 5 6 KB? So obviously 5 KB will load faster than the 10 KB, right? So that is the first advantage. In the size, JSON occupies less amount of space compared to the XML file. Okay, mainly these two things are used in a network communication. So JSON will load faster than the XML. JSON will load faster than what? XML. This is the first advantage of what? JSON. This is the first advantage of what? JSON. Second thing is nothing but if you take the XML, if you take the XML, there is no chance to specify the data type. Like for example, ID is a type of number, uh, name is a type of string. Like we don't have an option to specify the data type here. But here in case of JSON, see for 123 ID directly I given 123. I have not given any double quotes. I have not given. I have not given any double quotes. I have not given. Meaning it's a type is what? It's a type is number type. See for the remaining things we specified the double quotes we specified. It's a character type of a string type of data. So in JSON we can provide the data types we can provide, but in XML we cannot provide the data types we cannot provide. So easily we can represent here it's a string type of data, here it's an integer type of data. Easily we can represent in JSON. That is the second advantage. Third thing is nothing but even the parsing. Parsing means writing your object data into a JSON or JSON to object data. It's very simple in case of JSON. But here in case of XML, it's too difficult, we seen already practically we written a lot of logic we written to convert your object to XML to object, right? Meaning XML parsing is difficult, but whereas JSON, this JSON parsing is simple, like writing your object data into JSON to object. It's very simple in case of JSON. Okay, because of these three advantages, less in the size, so we can load faster than the XML. Second thing is whereas JSON supports the data types, XML will not support the data types. Third thing is easily we can parse the data from object to JSON and JSON to object. Because of these reasons, now the people are prefer to use this JSON than the XML. Now the people are prefer to use this JSON than what? XML. Now even if you go to, if you take any lot of projects, existing projects are working on this JSON. XML in very few places you can find, but majority of the places the people are prefer to use this JSON only to transfer the data from server to mobile or mobile to server. Okay, so now we'll see how to work with the JSON format. Okay, and one second, first we'll see how to write the data into JSON file. First we'll see what how to write the data into a JSON format. So we'll save this. So first we'll see how to write the data into what? Into a JSON file. But before that, you'll find few terminologies boss in the market. In future, you'll find few terminologies like one is GSON, second thing is Jackson, Jettison. Okay. Next, simple JSON. Like you'll find a lot of names you can find in the market. JSON, Jackson, Jettison, simple JSON. Like you will find a lot of names you will find in the market. All these are nothing but JSON. All these are nothing but JSON third-party libraries. All these are what? The JSON third-party libraries. Meaning, these libraries are providing how to read the data from JSON and how to write the data into JSON. In case of Java or other technologies, we had to take this third-party API support for writing the data into JSON and read the data from JSON. But in Android built-in is providing a support. Android built-in is providing what? A support for reading the data from object to JSON and JSON to object. So we don't need to take any third-party library support. We don't need to take, because Android built-in is providing what? Android SDK is providing the support for JSON parsing. So we don't require any third-party libraries. We don't require, because in future you'll find these names. You'll find like GSON, Jackson, and all. But remember, these are the third-party libraries for JSON parsing. Without these third-party libraries, also we can perform the JSON parsing, because Android is providing that JSON parsing support. It is providing. Okay. So now let's see here. We'll open our last class project called XML test. This is our last class project, XML test. So now here in the activity XML file, I want to create two more buttons. I want to create here. Now in the activity XML, I want to create two more buttons. I want to create. One is for write JSON, and I want to create one more button for read JSON. Write JSON and read JSON. Let's configure the click event for these two buttons. Write JSON. Second thing is what? Read JSON. Write JSON and read JSON. Let's configure the click event for these two buttons. Write JSON and read JSON. On click is equals to write JSON and on click is equals to read JSON. On click is equals to what? Write JSON, and on click is equals to what? Read JSON. So we had to create these two methods, this write JSON and read JSON. So these two methods we had to create in the activity class. Will create these two methods. The same example, XML parsing logic only I'm creating. I'm writing this JSON parsing logic also I'm writing. Okay. Okay, let's create two more methods here. One is write JSON and read JSON. Okay. So whenever user select the write JSON button, we want to write the data into one JSON file. We want to write the data. Okay. Let's see the JSON logic. See here, first we had to create what? The main JSON object we had to create. We had to create this object we had to create. If you want to write the data into JSON file, which contains multiple employee records, first we had to create this main JSON object we had to create first. This is the first thing. So if you want to create the JSON object, if you want to create, directly we are having a ready-made, and directly we are having a class called JSON object is a class. Let's specify the object is equals to new JSON object. JSON object is equals to what? New JSON object. So we created this main JSON object we created. We created what? The main JSON object we created. Next, this main JSON object contains one array. This main JSON object contains what? One array. So now we had to create this array we had to create. So if you want to create this array, if you want to create, let's create the object for, or let's specify the object for JSON array. Array is equals to new JSON array. Array is equals to what? New JSON array. So now we created this array object we created. Now we created the object for this array. Next, this JSON array contains multiple objects. Like this is one individual employee record. This is another individual employee record. So for this individual employee, so we had to create one more. We had to create an object. We had to create JSON object. Let's take this as an individual employee object. Employee object is equals to new JSON object of new JSON object. So employee object dot put is a method. Put is a method. So we had to specify the key. We had to specify in JSON what is a key. First thing is the ID. Okay. Next, what is the value? That value will get from edit text one component. We created a user interface. We created right here. In the XML file, we created a user interface, 4 text boxes. Meaning this ID value will get from the edit text one component. We are getting that ID value. Like this, we have to insert remaining 3 more keys. We have to insert for name, designation, and department. ID, name, designation, and department. Edit text one. Edit text 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So now here, okay. So now we created the individual object we created. Now we created this individual object we created now. Now this individual object we had to add to array. This individual object we had to add to what? We had to add this individual object we had to add to array we had to add, and this array we had to add to the main JSON object. Now we created this individual object we created. This individual object we had to create what? We had to add to what? We had to add to the array we had to add. Okay. So we created a JSON array we created, right? Array dot there is a method called put is a method. Put this employee object, meaning this individual employee object we added to array we added. Next, what we had to do? So now this process is completed. We added this main JSON object we added to array we added. Next, what we had to do? This array we had to add to the main JSON object we had to add. This array we had to add to the main JSON object. But while you are adding this array to the main JSON object, we had to specify a key we had to specify for this. The main JSON object dot put give a key. Let's take employees is a key. Employees is a key, comma. Second parameter is what? Array. Object dot put of we want to insert into array, but we want to give a name for that array. What is array name? Employees is array name. That's it. Simple. Hardly. Anyway, this is a common repeated logic, but if you accept this, hardly 3 or 4 lines of statement. That's it. We are converting the data, we are converting into JSON format. Okay, this logic is going to give an exception. So put the logic inside what? Put the logic inside the try catch. Okay. Now here, okay, what we did is now we inserted the data. Where the data is available? Now the data is available in a object format. Now the data is available what? In a object, the main JSON object. This object contains the entire data now. We create individual object, we place this object into array. Next array we placed into the main JSON object. Meaning now this JSON object contains the data. This main JSON object contains the data. Okay, now we want to write the data into a file. We want to write the data. Now we want to write the data into what? Into a file. We want to write the data. So if you want to write the data into a file, whatever the data is there in this object, first what we'll do is we'll get this object data into a string format. whatever the data is there in this main JSON object, first we'll get the data into which format? Into a string format we'll get. Whatever the data is there in the object, that entire data will get into what? Into a string format, we'll get the entire data. Next, whatever the data is there in the string, we'll write the data into a file, we'll write the data. Whatever the data is there in the string, that data will write into what? Into one file, we'll write the data. Whatever the data is there in the string, we'll write the data into what? One file we'll write. Okay. So now we store the entire data into the main JSON object. That object data convert into string format and write that object data into a file. Okay. Now see here, I want to write the data into a file. I want to write the data. If you want to write the data into a file, there is a class called file writer is a class. What is the class name? File writer is a class. So file writer is equals to a new file writer of specify object dot toString. Specify what? Object dot toString. Meaning whatever the data is there in the object, first that entire object data we are converting into string format. Sorry, not this one. Wait. File writer is equals to new file writer. We had to specify the file object. We had to specify where you want to create that JSON file. We had to specify the file name. We had to specify. I want to create that JSON file. I want to create in the storage. SD card 0 in the device internal storage. I want to create a JSON file. I want to create with the name Android and6am dot. What is the extension? File extension is .json. File writer is equals to new file writer. If it is a character type of data, then use file reader class for reading the data, file writer class for writing the data into a file. Okay, so now here we specified the file object. We specified where you want to create that file in the storage, internal storage, Android6am.json. Which data you want to write into file, you have to specify here. Okay, writer.write is a method in the file writer object dot. The file writer object dot, what is the method name? Write is a method. File writer object dot write is a method. In this write method, you have to specify which data you want to write into a file. Where the data is available in this object, the data is available, right? Object dot, there is a method called toString is a method. Object dot, there is a method called what? ToString is a method. So once if you call the ToString method, you will get that entire data you will get into string format. That string we are writing into one file we are writing. Writer.write of object.toString. Whatever the data is there in this object, convert that object data into string format, write that string into what? Into a file writer.write. So this file writer will maintain some buffer kind of thing, will maintain internally. So first we had to call a method called flush method. And if is there any existing data is still in the buffer, so we are pushing that one to write into a file. So once the file writing operation is completed, let's call writer.close method. Okay, this is a logic for writing the data into a file. There is a class called file writer to write the data into what? A file. The entire data is available in a object format. That object data we are writing into what? One file we are writing the data. Okay, so if you want for your reference, I'll send the code. I'll send. Okay, so now we'll test the application. Will test. Let's see, are we able to write the data into a JSON file or not? We'll see. Okay, let's run the app. Just give me a minute. I'll bring the cable. I'll bring USB cable. So let's run the app. So app is installed. Let's see, we'll insert the data, we'll insert. Specify what is the ID. I specified 133 is ID. What is the name? What is the designation? What is the department? Okay. Let's enter these details. And once if you click the write JSON button, so once if you select what? Write JSON button, and it will write the data into a JSON file. I selected write JSON, I selected. Now let's go and see whether the file is created or not. JSON file is created or not. Go to storage, internal storage, SD card 0. Directly we created a file we created with the name and6am dot and6am.json is a file name. Let's see the file is created or not. See, the file is created. and6am.json is a file name. Let's select this file. It will open the file. It will open. Okay. See, now the JSON file is created. Okay. This is a main JSON object. Then after that, it is created. Array it is created. Array name is what? Employees is array name, and ID is an object. Sorry, this is an object. This object contains ID, department, designation, and name. Okay. So now we are able to insert the data into what? Into a JSON file. We're able to insert the data into a JSON format. We inserted the data. Okay, this is how to write the data into a JSON file. So any queries in this writing operation? Write the data into a JSON file. Any queries? Okay. So next we'll see the reading operation. We'll see how to read the data from the JSON file. Put means nothing but we are inserting the data. Like for example, we created this individual object we created, right? This employee object. Employee object means nothing but this individual object we are creating now. This individual object where we had to put this individual object. This individual object contains again ID, name, designation, and department. So inside this individual object, so we are inserting this ID, name, designation, and department. Okay, and this individual object is a child of what? This individual object is a child of array. So that's why we return array dot put of this employee object, because now it's a child of this array. And next, the main JSON object dot, here we specified, okay, the individual object we created in the array we created. Now this array is what? Array is a child of main JSON object. That's why we are writing object dot put of. We are giving a name we are giving for the array. This array we are putting into where? Into the main JSON object. So we are giving a name we are giving that array. That object dot put of specify the array name. So clear, Nandakishore? Okay. So now we'll see. So now we'll see the next one, that is reading the data from a JSON file. If you want to read the data from JSON, if you want to read the data, see how we return the data into a file. How we return the data into a file. First, whatever the data is there in the object, first that entire object data we converted into which format? We converted into string format. We converted. Next, that string data we converted into a file. We converted that string data we converted into file. We converted. Now we have to make it reverse. If you want to read the data from a JSON file, if you want to read the data is available in a file format. Data is available in a file format. The data is available. Whatever the data is there in the file, that entire data we had to convert into first string format. We had to convert that entire file. We had to convert into what? We had to convert into a string format. We had to convert. This is the first thing. If you want to read the data from the JSON file, if you want to read whatever the data is there in the file, first we had to get that entire data into a string format. Then after that we can read the data from that string object. We can read the data. We can read from that string object. So now what is our first step? This is a first step. Read whatever the data is there in the file. First get that entire data into a string format. Now from this string you can read the data. From that JSON object you can read the data. So first we had to do this step. Whatever the data is there in a file, the entire data file data convert into what? Into a string format. Okay. So for this, let's see how to do this one. If you want to read the data from a file, we are having a class called file reader is a class. What is the class name? File reader is a class to read the data from a file. Reader is equals to new file reader of specify the path here where the file is located, from which file you want to read the data. Let's specify the file location. SD card 0 in the device internal storage and6am dot, what is the file name? .json is a file name. and6am.json is a file name. File reader is equals to new file reader. We specified the path, we specified from which file you want to read the data. Okay. Next, second thing is, so what is the first thing? We want to get that entire file data. We had to get into string format. We had to get the entire data. Whatever the data is there in a file, we had to get that entire data. We had to get into string format first. Okay. So even for this, but the data is available in a file reader means internally it is available the data in a byte array format. Now in this file reader means internally the data is available in a byte array format. The data is available. So first I'll write the logic, then I'll explain the logic. I'll explain. Okay, this is a logic for converting that. File data into a string format. Nothing else. Internally, file reader means nothing but internally it contains the data in a byte array format. Internally, it contains the data in which format? In a byte array format, the data is available. Okay. Whenever you call the read method, if you want to get the description, if you want to get, just go to the particular, click on that particular method, select the control and click on that particular method. And see here, what is the description it is showing? Reads a single character from this reader and returns it as an integer with the two higher order bytes set to 0. Returns -1 if the end of the reader has been reached. Okay, there is a method called read is a method. If you call this read method, you'll get the character. You'll get what? A character you will get. But that character directly you will not get the character. What you will get? you will get the integer, you will get single character from this reader and returns it as an integer, return it as a integer. And the last thing is what? Returns -1 if the end of the reader has been reached. That's why I specified here. First, I want to read the character I want to read. But he said, right, return type of this read method is not a character. You'll get int, you will get. Meaning very simple. Like for example, the character is available capital A, but you will not get capital A. In place of capital A, you will get 65, you will get. Okay, that's what the method description. Returns a single character in a integer format. That's why we take in an integer variable. Okay, but you will get only a single character you will get. If you want to get the next character, again we had to call the reader.read method. If you want to call the next character, if you want to call again, I had to call read. If you want to get again next character, again call reader.read. If you want to get next character, again reader.read. Like this, we had to call multiple times. We had to call until the end of the character. Until what? The end of the character. That's why rather than multiple times calling this read logic, it's a repeated thing. That's why we placed into one loop we placed. And they only specified, right, in the specification. End of the character is what? -1 is the end of the character. So I want to repeat this process. I want to repeat until the end of the document. But basically, we will not get the character. You will not get what you will get. A number you will get. Integer value you will get. That's why I'm getting the individual character I'm getting and converting the in an integer format. Again, I'm converting that integer format. I'm converting into character. Meaning, if you get 65, you will get here integer value. If you convert that 65 into character, you'll get capital A. You will get. I'm appending that capital A. I'm appending to MSC. Like this, from the file, I'm getting the individual character I'm getting from the file. Individual character I'm getting the file. I'm converting that character means nothing but individual character I'm getting in an integer format. That number integer I'm converting into character format. I'm appending that character to the MSC means string variable. I'm appending that character. I'm appending to the string variable. Like this, how many characters are there in the file? You'll get all the list of characters you will get, and we are storing all the characters. All the characters we are storing into what? One string variable, that is MSC. Okay, now the first thing is completed. What is our requirement? Whatever the data is there in the file, that entire file data we had to store into one string variable. That's what we did. We stored that entire file data, we stored into MSG, we stored that entire file data. So data is available in a string format. Now here, let's create the object for JSON object. We want to read the data from the file. JSON object is equals to new JSON object of, directly specify the MSC here. Because the object data, the JSON data is already available in this string. JSON data is already available in this string. So directly I'm specifying JSON object is equals to new JSON object of MSC, because this string object contains the JSON data. So by using this statement, you'll get the main JSON object you'll get, meaning you'll get this JSON object you'll get. This object contains an array. What is array name? Employees is an array, right? This object contains an array. So we had to get that array, we had to get JSON array. Array is equals to object dot get JSON array is a method. Object dot get JSON array is a method. We had to specify the array name, we had to specify. Okay, so we had to specify what? The array name we had to specify. Object dot get JSON array of, specify the array name. What is array name? We specified employees is array name. So from that object we got the array we got. So array contains lot of individual records. So we got this array we got. So now the array contains what? Array contains internally lot of individual objects. Array contains internally lot of individual objects. This is one object and this is one object. Like this, it contains a lot of individual objects. Like this, it contains what? A lot of individual objects. We had to get that object, we had to get the individual object. So JSON object, individual object is equals to array dot, there is a method called array dot get JSON object of, we have to pass the index, we have to pass, but we don't know how many records are available in this array. So that's why what we'll do is we'll put a loop, we'll take a loop, we'll take int I is equals to 0, but we already used I, we already used. Let's take another variable, j is equals to 0, j less than array dot length and j plus plus. Now how many records are available in the array, that many times this loop is going to be repeated. Okay, now from this array get the individual JSON object, array dot get JSON object of, pass the index j, array dot get JSON object of, pass the index j. Okay, now from this individual object, get the read the data. So here we specified all our string type only we inserted. ID, it's a string format, name is string, designation is string, department is also in a string format. So now while you are reading the data, so individual object dot, there is a method called get whatever the type you specified while you are inserting, int or string or float or double, what type you specified while you are inserting. Even at the time of reading also, you had to specify the same thing. Individual object dot get string, give a key. Keys ID is a key. This is the first thing you want we inserted. Okay. Next, what is the next one? Individual object dot get string of name. Get string of name, and individual object dot get string of designation, and individual object dot get string of department. Okay, but just we are getting the data here, but what we'll do is we'll display this data. We are reading the data from the JSON object, individual JSON object. We'll display this data in a toast message. Let's display a toast message. Toast dot, what is the method name? Make text is a method. Get application context, comma, one is ID. Just I want to print in a new line, that's it. Just why I'm writing this slash and statement. Okay, the last thing is length underscore long dot show, and finally we had to call what? Show method we had to call. Okay, whatever the data is there in the object, that entire data we are displaying in a toast message, that's it. Okay, so now, so it's giving in some exception, it is giving because put the logic inside what? The try catch. This entire read JSON logic will put inside the try catch, will put. Just briefly I'll explain once again what we did. We specified from which file you want to read the data, but internally the data is available in a byte array format. Okay, so that's why we are getting the individual character we are getting by using a method called read method, but that character you will not get directly, you will not get the character. You'll get that character in an integer format you'll get. That's why we are converting that integer, we are converting into character, and we are appending that character to the MSG. And again read the next byte, next byte, next byte, like this until the end of the byte. We have to repeat this process. End of the byte or end of the character is going to terminate with -1, meaning if it is -1 means that is a end of the byte. So we are reading one character, we stored the entire characters we stored into MSG. Meaning this MSG object contains the entire data. Directly we are passing that MSG, we are passing as an input parameter to JSON object. So we'll get the main JSON object. From that object, get the array. Array contains multiple individual employee records. So that's why multiple records. That's why we created a loop. We created how many individual objects are there. That many times this loop is going to be repeat. From that individual object, we are getting that ID, name, designation, department, and we are displaying in a toast. We are displaying. Let's run the code and see are we able to read the data from JSON or not. So app is installed. Select this read JSON button. So we are able to read the data from JSON. 133, Mahesh, TL, and mobility. So now reading logic is perfect. Whatever the logic we written, that reading logic is correct only. But insertion logic only, we had to make a small change. Insertion logic, we had to make a change. We had to make in the insertion logic. So change is nothing but, see, already there is a record called Mahesh record is there, right? Now if you insert one more record, if you insert, it's going to override that existing record. Inserting one more record called Bhaskar record I'm inserting. Inserting one more record called Bhaskar record. So 134 Bhaskar, senior software engineer and Java. Select this write JSON button. It's going to write the data into JSON. Earlier 133 record is there. Now you are inserting 134 record. Now if you select this read JSON, if you select, see we are getting only 134 record we are getting. Where is the 133 record? Now that is what? That is what override. Meaning with this logic, whatever the logic we created, whatever the logic we written for insertion, that logic is going to override the existing XML file, existing JSON file. Once again, if you click on the write JSON button, it's going to override the existing JSON file. It's going to override. So it should not override the existing JSON file. So it has to append the data. If data is already there, it has to append to the previous data. If it is not available, then we had to create a new document. We had to create. Okay. Now for this, we had to write the logic with the combination of both reading logic as well as writing logic. Okay, simple was. First we'll take the path. We'll take separately. We'll take the path. File path is there, right? This write JSON button. Separately, we'll take the path. We'll take separately string path is equals to from this location. I want to read the JSON file. Is a JSON file, right? Android 6am.json. Let's copy this path. Let's copy the path and specify here. Okay. So file f is equals to new file of what? New file of path. File f is equals to what? New file of path. So now when we had to create this new JSON object and new JSON array, first time, right? The file is not available, then we had to create the new JSON object and new JSON array. If the file is already available, it should not create a new JSON object and it should not create the new array. It should not create. That's it. If you make only that change, if you make, it's going to append to the previous data. So now every time don't create this JSON object and don't create the array. So let's write the logic here. If we'll write a statement here. If f dot exist means the file is available. Else the file is not available. Else the file is not available. So let's move these two variables globally. This JSON object and JSON array will not declare here. So globally we'll move here. First thing is what? JSON object. Second thing is what? JSON array. So when we had to create this new JSON object and new JSON array, if the file is not available, let's move the logic from here to else statement. If the file is not available, then only create a new JSON object and then only create what? A new JSON array. Okay, if the file is available, then if f dot exists, if the file is already available, then what we have to do? If the file is already available, whatever the data is there in the existing JSON file is there, right? First, we have to get that entire data we have to get, meaning this is the logic we have to write. Let's copy the entire logic and specify here. First, whatever the data is there in the file, that entire data we have to read first into a string format. Object is equals to JSON object.msc and array is equals to get JSON array of array. That's it. If the JSON object is already available, first we have to get the data we have to get, object and array we have to get. If it is not available, file is not available, then only create a new JSON object and new JSON array. Okay, let's run the code now. I'll send you these updated two methods. I'll send you just if you want. This is updated write JSON code, write JSON method code. Okay, so now the app is already installed. Earlier we are having an issue. We cannot insert the multiple records. You cannot insert. Now click on read JSON. We are having only one record. We are having 134 record. Insert. Want to insert one more record. 135 Lokesh. So click on the insert button. Write JSON. So now it's going to write the data. So I want to insert one more record. Like click on write JSON. So now inserted the data into JSON file we inserted. Now if you click read JSON button, see here this is the first record 134. Is another record, second record 135 and 136. Okay. Now we are able to insert multiple records. We are able to insert in the JSON file. Okay, this is the syntax. First, we have to check the file is not available or not available. If it is not available, then only create a new object and new JSON array. If it is already available, get the data from the existing file. Get the data from the existing file, and then we are appending the data we are appending to that object. Okay, this is JSON. So any queries?